sit down. We're ready for the final section of the day. I'd like to introduce Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett and soon-to-be Governor of Wisconsin.
Well, good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here, and I've had a busy 24 hours, so I feel like I'm starting to calm down a little bit, though, because we've been running around last night we had our first debate, which I was very pleased to have, and I would like to have another 2 or 3 dozen debates. Mr. Walker doesn't seem to want to debate me or even talk to me when I'm on the same stage as he is. But we're going to continue to talk about the issues that I think are important to the people of the state of Wisconsin. This morning we didn't leave home until about 6:15 and went over to Oktoberfest in La Crosse, which, if you haven't been there, is quite the party, quite the party. So, and then we went from there up to Warren's, where we went to the Cranberry Fest. So we've been running around a lot today, but it's a great time of year to be traveling through the state of Wisconsin. And I'm, again, delighted to be here today and just to have the opportunity to talk to you for a few minutes about my campaign for governor and what I see as the real defining issues in this race. But first and foremost, I want to make it clear that jobs continue to be my #1 priority, that this is why I'm running, and this is not an issue that comes foreign to me, because as the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, I've worked on these issues for the last 6 years. And when I came in, I really made a conscious effort at the onset to try to bring leaders together. Rural leaders, suburban leaders, business leaders, university leaders. And that led to the creation of what's known as the M7 or the Milwaukee 7, whose purpose is to try to create, retain, and attract jobs. And I just want to take a minute and give you a real life story, because I think this is very instructive, both as to my style, the approach that I take, and I think on a bigger scale, just how Wisconsin views itself. And this occurred about 1.5 years ago. At that time, Republic Airlines had just consummated the deal to purchase Midwest Airlines. And so the deal was done, and the CEO of Republic was sitting in my office, and we were having a cordial visit between the CEO of the city and the CEO of the company. And he mentioned that they were going to be making decisions in the upcoming months as to where to locate some mechanics jobs, some back office jobs, and some sales jobs. Not surprisingly, as the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, I said, well, we'd like a shot at these. And he said, well, you will have a shot at it, but I just want you to know it's going to be a competitive process, and Indianapolis and Denver are also in the running for this, because some of the jobs were located in each of those cities. And I said, fine. And the reason I use this as an example is because I think we're all aware that you have magazines or newspapers or conservative think tanks or right-wing business organizations who love to talk about what a terrible state Wisconsin is to do business in. And I think that's one of the things that Scott Walker loves to talk about. It's just how terrible everything is here. Well, this was the real world. This was not an academic study. This was not a magazine. This was not a politician saying how bad everything was. This was Indianapolis versus Denver versus Milwaukee. And it was a real CEO with real jobs choosing among real cities. So working through the M7, the Milwaukee 7, we put forth a plan. And it included things like tax cuts that were tied to job creation, something that I think is very important. We had a strong site selection element to it, and we worked on workforce, the need for workforce, and some of the people were people who had worked for the Midwest. And I will always remember the article that I saw in an Indianapolis newspaper that just dismissed Wisconsin and said, well, this is obviously a competition between Indianapolis and Denver. Well, last November, the announcement was made, and we ran the table. All 700 jobs that had been located in Oak Creek, not even the city of Milwaukee, Oak Creek, continued to be there. Some of them, most of them were in Oak Creek. Some of them may have in fact been in Milwaukee, but it was primarily an Oak Creek deal. And then the 700 to 800 that were in Indianapolis, Denver, and some were actually in New Mexico, they all were going to come here and are now in the process of coming here. And I think probably 500 or so have already come here. I use that as an example. Again, because Scott Walker loves to say how terrible everything is. And my approach is, hey, let's get it done. Let's get it done. Let's not sit here and feel sorry for ourselves. Let's not blame somebody else. If our interest is having people have jobs where they can support our families, Let's roll up our sleeves and get it done. And that's the approach that I take. And I really do believe this. I think that part of the job of the governor is to be the #1 salesperson, the #1 ambassador, the #1 cheerleader for the state of Wisconsin. And I don't think that you sell a sweatshirt, I don't think you sell a car, I don't think you sell orange juice by saying how lousy it is. If you believe in the product, if you believe in it, you're going to do everything you can to sell it in a positive light. And that's just the approach that I take. And again, I think that he just loves to say just how bad everything is, how bad everything is. And I'm not going to say that we don't have challenges or problems in the state of Wisconsin, because everybody in this room knows that we do. And we're going to deal with them. That's the way we've always approached problems. You deal with the problems. But you don't go out there saying how bad the product is. And just to even be more specific, once we had launched this M7 effort, the group that helped us get all these jobs to stay here and retain them here, they asked Scott Walker what he thought of this organization. And frankly, he had not been involved in starting it, and I had been involved in starting it. This was long before we were opponents of each other for governor. And he said, oh, that's fine, but it's like putting lipstick on a pig. And that's his quote, lipstick on a pig. So here you have the guy now who wants to be the #1 ambassador for the state, and he talks about this state's climate as putting lipstick on a pig. And I just don't see where people in the state will find that to be a valuable way for us to promote ourselves at a time when we really do have to promote ourselves. So I just want you to have an understanding that I do think it's very, very important for us to be proactive and aggressive in creating jobs. And obviously I want them to be family supporting jobs, and that's one of the challenges, because so many of the jobs where people can support their family have now moved overseas, which brings me to the second issue I want to talk about briefly, because it's really more of a national issue, and I know that Russ was here and he's very, very articulate on this issue. So I do not have a PhD in economics, and I haven't written extensively on economics, but to cut to the chase, we got to make more stuff in this country. And we have to have more jobs where people all the way up and down that socioeconomic ladder can have jobs where they can support their families. And I can tell you this as the mayor of the city of Milwaukee. 50 years ago in my home community, and in many communities around the state, you can look at Beloit or Wausau, you can go to La Crosse or go to Eau Claire or go to Ashland or Superior. You had jobs where people could support their families. And not my neck of the woods, what you needed to succeed 50 years ago were two things. You needed a strong back and a good alarm clock. Because you could go and get a job at a cannery or a brewery or a factory, and if you didn't like the job, you could quit, and the same day you could go get a job working second shift. And unfortunately, those jobs first started going south to Mexico and then to China. And now we need to find ways to get more jobs in this country where people can't produce things. I was in Kenosha earlier this week, and it was very interesting to me, because a fellow at an event that I had, a political event, he came up and gave me a pack of pictures. And it was a lot of agricultural equipment, large equipment. And I recognized all the names. They were all names that I just associate with farming. And each picture on the back, it would tell the country that the product was made in. And none of them were made here. And it just made me think, boy, this is the challenge. And we have to find ways to change this if we're going to have a middle class in this country. Which brings me to my next point, and that is jobs are very, very, very important. Again, that's my focus in a huge way. But there's also another focus I have, and that's on the fiscal condition of the state, because it is a difficult time right now. In fact, I talked about a little bit in the debate that I had last night, because it was about 2 months ago that I was sitting on an airplane, and right next to me was a USA Today newspaper, and I just picked it up, and it's talking about how this year, in 2010, we'll have more new governors than at any time since 1960. So a half century ago is when we'll have as many new governors as we have right now. And then they talked to the political scientist and asked him why this was the case. And he said, because right now being governor is the worst political job in America. And of course I'm reading this and thinking, and that's the job I'm applying for. So you can question my intelligence for even being interested in it. But the challenge, of course, is we do have a very serious structural deficit here.